Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, where clarity meets courage and personal stories become powerful change. Today's guest is Michelle Florendo, a Stanford-trained decision engineer and executive coach who helps people make better decisions with less stress and more clarity. After years of helping leaders across tech, healthcare, and finance, from early startups to Fortune 500s, Michelle has become a global voice on how decision science can transform our careers, our leadership, and our lives. Known for blending data and emotion, logic and empathy, Michelle's approach empowers people to make value-aligned choices that not only make sense, but feel right. If you've ever faced a fork in the road and wished for a smarter, kinder way forward, this conversation is for you. Welcome, Michelle.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Summer.
It's a pleasure. I can't wait to get into this conversation. But before we dive into your professional journey, if you could describe your life to this point in one word, what would that word be and why?
I thought about this one for a while, and I would say what describes the past 20 years has been unlearning.
Okay, tell us more.
Yeah, so if I could choose more than one word, I'd say my journey is characterized by learning and then unlearning. I'm the daughter of immigrants, and so I was taught from a very early age that like the formula for success is to work hard, do well in school, go to college, get a good job. And that was the formula. And so in being taught that, I did all of those things and ended up at Stanford. And then when I got that good job, I realized, wait a minute, this isn't it. There's still more that I need to figure out. Like, how do I navigate? Am I really happy? And I realized that all this time I had been doing a lot of learning on just how to do things, but I hadn't really learned how to decide for myself, how to decide intentionally, how to use those decisions to really shape my path forward. And so I think the past 20 years has been a lot of unlearning that initial formula and then also exploring what does it look like to carve our own paths as opposed to just do the things in a plan.
Well, I love that word, to unlearn. And that's a lot. We've learned through school books, we've learned through culture, we've learned through conditioning, we've learned
Mm-hmm.
from clergy, we've learned from teachers, we've learned from our friends, and what might be considered as we began to where we are now, what's acceptable, what's
Mm-hmm.
expected, all these different things. And to unlearn is not just something that is in your mind, it's something that's attached to the emotions as well in the heart.
Yes. Yes.
And that's, I think, the biggest issue is not getting past the mental framework of that, but the emotional part of that.
Right.
I think there's a balance in both, of course, but I also think that that emotional component, that attachment to what we've learned, to that separation is huge. So, with that said, your background is so unique from engineering, business, and coaching. Can you share what drew you to decision science and how your personal story shaped your mission?
I didn't actually seek out decision science. I felt like I fell into it. And so, in the process of executing against that formula for success, right? Do well in school, go to college, find a good job. When I was in college, I didn't go the doctor or law route, but I figured engineering was still an acceptable thing for my immigrant
Absolutely.
parents. And so when I was learning about different engineering disciplines, it was actually the founder of the Filipino American Student Union at Stanford who introduced me to industrial engineering. He said it was the engineering of efficiency. And I thought that was so cool. And by the time that I arrived at Stanford, they had rearranged the department into the management, science, and engineering department, of which one of the tracks was finance and decision engineering. Now, a lot of the people in that track specialized in the finance piece, went on to be investment bankers. I like sleep. And so that was not a route for me. But I was fascinated that there was this entire field that was all about optimizing decisions. How is it that you support, in that context, how is it that you support organizations and businesses to make the best decisions for them? And we as humans make decisions all the time. It's how we're able to shape our paths. And I found it so fascinating that I had never heard of this before. And so I threw myself into it. And years later, after I got a, for the people who are listening, I'm putting in air quotes, good job, good management consulting job after school, but I wasn't happy. I was exploring, well, what do I do? What do I do now? How do I move forward? And I remember having a conversation with another alum, and he said, wait a minute. So you're telling me you're trying to figure out what you want to do next, and you're really stuck. You have no idea to move forward. But you spent 4 years studying this entire discipline about how to help businesses and companies make the best decisions for themselves. Why not use that on the decision you're facing?
Mhm.
And so that was the starting point of me even seeing how this field could be applied to personal decisions.
It's so interesting too, because when we do think about engineering, we think about structures, we think about,
Calculating things.
right. I love this area of engineering. It's one I hadn't heard of before I read what you offered. And I was like, wow, yeah, I want to have you on the show to talk more about this. This is so interesting. So many of us were never taught, as you said, how to make decisions, only that we're supposed to make the right ones.
Right.
Why do you think decision making causes so much stress, especially for high performers?
Ooh, I love how you added that twist on the end because I find that decision making can create a level of stress for anyone. But I think
Right.
especially for high performers who are, and I think that's what attracted me to the field. Ooh, I can optimize decisions. Tell me, how do I make the best decisions? I
Yeah.
think it's stressful because I think one of the key things that I learned from this field is that we are often confusing and conflating what a good decision is with what a good outcome is.
Mm.
So when people tell me I need to make a good decision, I need to make the right decision, I'm afraid of making the wrong decision, really what they're saying is I need to make sure that the outcome is good.
I
And that's where the stress comes in because we're now holding ourselves to this standard where, oh, a good decision means I need to either be able to fully control the outcome or I need to be clairvoyant and be able to see the future. Neither of which are things that humans can actually do.
Yeah. Because to think that we have all of the control over every situation really is not true.
Right, right,
However, we can do the best that we can to look at the outcome that we want to achieve.
right.
I always say there's a difference between response and reaction,
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
which is somewhat of decision versus outcome. And so your response is looking down the road to what you do want to achieve or you're trying to achieve and what steps you could possibly take to get there. Doesn't mean that all the steps are going to be successful, but guess what? In those steps is wisdom, gained wisdom.
Yes,
And so that wisdom we take on to help with the next step,
right.
to further us in the next step. I think that's where the pressure comes in because we think that every step should be perfection.
Yeah.
And maybe not. It's not.
You're highlighting a really important point too, because I think a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking everything from here on out is going to be determined by this one decision. And
Right.
just like you said, actually, the way that life plays out is we make a decision with what we already know about what we want and the information we have and the options in front of us. And then things happen, and we may have new information or new options or new insights and wisdom about what we truly want. And we have
Yeah,
the opportunity to make a new decision.
absolutely. So I love what you're doing because it does teach a process about decision making. People want us to make decisions. And it's funny, I think we talked about this in our first conversation about how we're told to make decisions, make the right decisions. But if it's not modeled for us, if a process is not explained,
Right.
how are we supposed to
Supposed
make
to
these
know.
decisions, right? How are we supposed to know? And it follows us all the way up through college, if that's the route
Right.
that you're taking.
Mm-hmm.
where we're told before we even get into college to declare a major.
Mm-hmm.
How do we even know?
It starts even sooner than that, right?
Right,
Like if
right,
you think about kids, even in elementary school, they're often asked, what do you want to be when you
right.
grow up? And the expectation is that they would be able to answer with some sort of title or profession. I always joked before I had kids, I'm going to teach my kids if anyone asks them that, I want them to answer happy.
Awesome.
Like, right? Because, like you said, what is it that we're modeling in how we are asking people to make decisions and the lack of scaffolding or support we are providing for how to arrive at that decision?
I love it. Scaffolding, engineering.
Right.
Okay. So you say big decisions deserve both data and emotion. Can you
Mhm.
talk about what that looks like in practice and why it matters?
Yes. So, as an executive coach, I am often coaching in the corporate sector. And in the corporate sector, emotions get a bad rap. I find a lot of people saying, I need to make a good decision. I don't want to make an emotional decision. And I say, oh, that's very interesting. Are you saying that a good decision must be purely rational? And they're like, yes, I need to be rational and logical. And it's interesting to me because I think what people forget is that there's this distinction between acting from emotion versus being able to observe emotion. Because baked into emotion are needs. Our emotions are often pointing to needs. And so when we are feeling fear in the face of a decision, oh, what is the fear of? How does that, provide data around what it is that we are wanting or not wanting in that outcome? If there is excitement, right? Oh, okay. What is that excitement about? If there is stress, what is at the root of that stress? And so I think there's a lot of valuable data to be gained from emotions if we know how to take a step and not be reactive from those emotions, but observe them and respond appropriately.
Absolutely. Because I do believe, like you just explained, there's a distinct difference between understanding our emotions
Hmm.
and being emotional.
Yes,
And so when people say that emotions don't belong in the professional setting, I disagree.
100%.
Because we are human, we come with emotions. That is a
Exactly.
part of our makeup. And it's about coping as well. How are you coping through these decisions that you're making? Are you understanding and embracing your emotions to the point where you can make better decisions? Or are you becoming overly emotional where that's clouding your vision for the next step?
Right.
And there's a very distinct difference, I believe, in that. Thank you for bringing that up. It's so important in your description of that, and that understanding of our emotions is really critical when it comes to having more clarity, being able to be less stressed in what we do, what our decision-making process is. Now, you've coached leaders in incredibly fast-paced, high-stakes environments. What common decision-making traps do you see even the most successful professionals fall into?
I think one of the traps is ignoring the emotions that exist, even for themselves or even within their team, right? I coach a lot of engineers or like technical founders too. And
Yeah.
sometimes you cannot motivate your team with logic. There has to be both fact and feeling there. And so if you're ignoring what emotions are present and not giving space to acknowledge them, you're missing out on the opportunity to understand how, after you make this decision, can you motivate and rally everyone around you. And so I think
Right.
ignoring emotions is one huge mistake. I think another one is there's an expert in the decision making space, Annie Duke, and one of her most recent books was called Quit. And it's all about how oftentimes we are holding on to that decision that we made and not acknowledging that, oh, maybe it's time to make a new decision and maybe it's time to pivot versus just continuing to persevere and hold on to the decision that we made when we had different sets of data or different priorities and values. And so I think that's another one where people are holding on too long and they're not recognizing the opportunity to make a new decision given the new environment.
I love that. That's so important. First of all, let me take a step back here because one of the things that we've been discussing is emotions. And many times when I go into either consultations or groups, even in my core group of folks that work with me, I ask them to identify an emotion, how they're feeling, because a
Mm.
lot of times we haven't even been taught.
How to name them.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. And I find it funny because I'll take out this little sheet and it's got all these little faces. right? You know the sheet I'm
Yes.
talking about? And
Yes, yeah.
as somebody who's worked in the human services field as both a clinician and a doctor of clinical psych, I take this little sheet out and people find it like, what is that? Why are you taking that out? Because I want you to be able to name your emotion, to
Hmm.
identify it, to understand the alignment that you're feeling and to be able to put a name to it because we
Right.
haven't been taught that. Guess what we've been taught? Put it away. Don't worry about it. That'll go
Stuff it
away. You'll
down,
feel
hide
better.
it.
Exactly, exactly. So the first thing, I think is really valuable is teaching people how to recognize their own emotions, how
Yes.
to name it, and then what to do with it.
Right.
It's part of the process, right? Because
Yeah.
when I used to do evaluations in psych hospitals, one of the main components is our emotional status framework, where we're coming from emotionally. First step is clinical, then it's your personality and your emotions, and then it's your social setting, and then it's your health, and then it's like an overall functioning, right? So we
Yeah.
look at many factors. One of those is our emotions. How are you dealing with them? What does that look like for you? So for you to bring this up, for us to talk about this, it's so valuable because it plays a significant role in our decision-making process,
Absolutely.
regardless of what type of leader or where you're at in your leadership journey. Because I believe everybody has the opportunity to be a leader from where they begin to where they end. So,
Yeah.
one of your gifts is helping people make values aligned decisions. How can someone begin identifying what truly matters to them when they're feeling overwhelmed or unclear?
Yes. When I teach people about the three components of every single decision, the first one is values or objectives. And I want to acknowledge that, similar to what you said, it can be difficult for people to name their emotions. It can be difficult to name your values off the bat. I think there was a study done where if you were to ask just any given person, what are your values? Only 7% of people were actually able to articulate something.
Mm,
And so, what I advocate for is mining what is already present. I actually find that decisions are a great way to provide a window into what we value. And one of the ways you can do that is through writing things down. So, I have a framework called attractive concerning. And so, if you're in the midst of a decision, likely you already have some feelings about the options in front of you. So, why not mine that data? And so the way that attractive concerning works, you draw a horizontal line across your page. Above the line is attractive. And so you go through each option that you're facing, like maybe option one. Okay, what is attractive? Like, what is making you lean in? What is making you want to possibly choose that option? And then below the line, what's concerning about it? What makes you worried? What gives you pause? What makes you lean out from it? And then to continue to just mine how are you feeling about each of these options. And then once you write that down on the page, you can get a sense of what are the key themes in what matters to you. There might be themes like security, or it might be, optimizing growth, or it might be what other people think. And I think the key when you're looking at the themes is not to have any judgment of like, oh, I shouldn't care about that. Like, let's leave the judging ourselves. Let's just see what surfaces. Because even then, you can make this micro decision of what are the values that I want to use to drive this decision? And what are the ones that I actually want to deprioritize?
that's great. I love that exercise. I'm really shocked by that study that you noted regarding that 7%. You said 7%, right?
Yeah.
That's nutty butters. I mean, that only 7% of the people that were surveyed named their values or identify their values.
I think especially now, given the rise of just technological noise, and so
Yeah.
media and social media, we are constantly bombarded with what we should value or what we should want or what other people think and say we should want or value.
Yeah.
That it takes some discipline and time to sift through, okay, what is it that's actually important to me versus what I'm being told should be important to me?
Oh, I love that, especially related to tech. I think we can apply that to many things to include like politics,
Mm-hmm.
tech. I mean, there's just so much that we
Yeah.
can touch on in regards to understanding why we're doing what we're doing based on our values, based on our emotions. What other variables do you look at when you're working with people? Emotions, values?
Well, I also have an exercise called the decision inventory exercise where I ask people basically to do a brain write, to brain dump about everything that they might be carrying with respect to a decision. And then I'll have them sort it into feelings, values, options, information, and then even decisions. Like, what really is the decision to be made, or what are the smaller decisions? How we frame a decision can have so much influence on how we approach it.
Yeah, I love that assessment tool and that somewhat of a free association of identifying these different variables. That's so important when you're working with somebody where you can help them break it down. You can take them through those strategies or those steps to really understand those different variables, right? To
Hmm.
make a more clear, informed, emotionally based decision. That's
Right.
awesome. So, who are the people that you're looking at in regards to working with? Who are the people that you most work with? Do you have a message for them?
I think the people who I work with most are, like you said, the high achievers who are very concerned about wanting to make the right decision, and who find themselves so paralyzed by stress that it keeps them from moving forward. Because the thing is, decision making is a skill. And what that means is it gets better as we continue to do it. And so, if I can give people the tools for getting unstuck, for having the confidence and the clarity to be able to move forward in a decision, that's ultimately what's going to help them be a better decision maker over time. And over time, achieve better outcomes, right? It's not through control or clairvoyance, but through practice.
Right, right. I love this. This has been a great conversation. And as we come to the close of this interview, for anyone facing a big decision right now, what's one actionable tip they can use today to reduce stress and move forward with more clarity?
I think we talked a lot in this conversation about the power of naming, right? Or the power of
Yeah,
externalizing. And so this may seem very simple, but I've seen it shift how people feel about, or even just tone down the stress level on a decision. And it's to write things down. Oftentimes I hear about people who are awake at 2 a.m. thinking through a decision. But if you write it down, if you get it down on paper, not only can you shelve it for when you're actually ready to do something about it, but it gives you an opportunity to create that distance to observe what is going on. Where have I been spending a lot of time? Have I been spending a lot of time and energy focusing on the parts I can't control? Have I spent any time at all articulating what I value? Or what are the feelings that are present here? And I think even in that simple act of writing things down and putting it somewhere where we can actually look at it, because it's very hard to get a handle on these thoughts and feelings as they're swirling in our heads and bodies, that provides such a great starting point for calming ourselves in the process and being able to get towards clarity.
I love it. Thank you so much, Michelle, for one, that tip, that wonderful tip, and also for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
It's been such a fun conversation. Yeah.
I've had a blast. I loved this. So you can follow Michelle Florendo on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and YouTube at The Decision Geek and at poweredbydecisions.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.